Welcome to our second episode of the Röhlig Radar podcast, where we discuss the latest trends, insights, and stories from the world of freight and logistics and what they mean for Australian and New Zealand businesses. I'm your host, Jay Farrugia, and today I'm joined by Remi Favier, our ocean freight expert. Remi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us more about who you are, your role, what you do at Röhlig.
Yes, sure. So my name is Remi Favier. I'm the head of the sea freight product for Röhlig in Australia and New Zealand. I've been working in this industry for 15 years. And like many people in this industry, I didn't choose specifically to work in it. I'm sure it's the same with you.
Very similar story, yeah.
Yeah, and 99% of the people I meet. But once you're in this industry, you don't go because it's so fascinating. You know, when you think that just in this room, 99% of the stuff that we see, you know, this table, this microphone, everything, at some point it was on a ship. And I find it fascinating, you know. So 15 years in the industry, 2 years with Röhlig, and before with the shipping lines. As you can maybe guess with my accent, you could guess which shipping line I was working with.
Maybe a French one, maybe?
Yeah, maybe a French one, yeah. So what's my role?
And I do apologize. We didn't bring any croissants or baguettes today, but...
yeah, actually, that would have been good, you know. At least a beret, I could have had a beret, you know. But yeah, my role at Röhlig as head of sea freight procurement for Australia and New Zealand is mostly about managing carrier relationship, making sure that we have the strongest relationship with the carriers. And it's also about contract negotiation, of course. I'm lucky to have a great team behind me with this. The idea is to make sure that we have the best conditions available in the market for our customers. One important thing, and we will touch base on this later, is we need to make sure that we monitor market development. And last thing about my job, and that's my favorite part, is to talk to our customers and make sure that I understand their needs and to translate those needs into a reliable sea freight option.
Excellent. Yeah, it's great. And I think it's quite unique with us where all of our product managers are out there in front of the customers, understanding what the customer needs to then relay that into conversations and negotiations with our service providers.
And at the end, it's all about the customers because every customers, again, are different. You have customers that import very low value commodity, so they need the cheapest rates to make it work in their business. But some customers, they're more into reliability and service from the shipping line. So some customers, it's both at the same time. Most customers, it's both at the same time because price is important. But yeah, this is what we have to deal with. And this is the what we need to translate into our sea freight offering.
What are you seeing in the market at the moment? Well, obviously, there's been a lot of geopolitical tensions. I've got, vessels still going around the Cape of Good Hope. A lot of things happening in China. Give us a quick snapshot of what you're seeing at the moment.
So, of course, the main thing that's happening on the market and that started back in April is the war in Iran. The war between Iran and the US basically shut down completely one of the biggest straits in the world, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And because of that, we are seeing a massive roller coaster with a shortage of capacity, shortage of equipment, longer transit time. The schedule reliability is in shambles. So this has affected pretty much the whole supply chain worldwide. And something that is a bit of a pity is that at the beginning of the year, most of the shipping lines, they were interested to move back to the Suez Canal. And because of what's happening in Iran, they are not. Yep. So we are still seeing a few services, especially with 2 shipping lines that goes via the Suez Canal, but it's very marginal. And we are really far from having all the shipping lines moving back to the Suez Canal because it's still too dangerous to cross now. Yeah. So that's the main thing, but there's other things as well in the market. And we can't only focus on what's happening in the Middle East. There's still a war between Ukraine and Russia, and it still impacts us in Australia in some extent because I give you a specific example. This customer, we're not going to name him, but this customer is importing roughly 500 containers per year out of Ukraine. And it's a raw material that is very important for one key industry in Australia. And because of the war in Ukraine, the shipping lines, they are not offering the Ukrainian ports anymore. So what we had to do is to find a solution where we were taking the containers in Ukraine. We trucked them all the way to Poland because Poland was the safest option first for the cargo. and also the most cost-effective option. So we managed to do that, and we loaded that on the direct service from Europe into Australia. And yet, so this cargo is still moving. So you think that being in Australia, we are far from what's happening on the other side of the world, especially in Ukraine, but it still impacts us. And of course, you have what's happening with Mr. Trump.
Yep. We're going to get to that. And I think one of our upcoming guests is actually going to be from the US. So, so far we've had Felix, German, yourself, French, and then someone directly from the US. So that's coming in a later episode. So, really excited for that. But back to the ocean freight. We're seeing freight rates increase. Where's that heading? Are we seeing the peak? Is it still going to continue to increase? Talk us through that. And I suppose I'm sure you brought your crystal ball today.
I left it outside a bit. Yeah, it's a question that everybody would like to answer. But from what I see, the rates they have increased, of course, because the cost to service Australia and New Zealand has increased for the shipping line. I'll give you a specific example. Servicing Europe to Oceania, you need more ships. Instead of 14 ships to run the service, you need 20. So it has a cost. You burn more fuel, and it impacts also congestion in Australia because there's more vessels arriving in Australia. So there's a higher cost to service Australia, and at the same time there is a higher demand. And why there's a higher demand? It's for one particular reason, because of the war. What happened is that when the war started, we've seen a surge of demand because there were a little bit of panic on the market. The customers wanted to build their inventories and they were forecasting maybe higher freight rates. So what they've done is that instead of importing the majority of their volume from August to December, they forward buying a lot of those volume in April, May, and June. So that created more volumes coming into Australia, especially out of China. And the big question is that, will that continue? Because usually what you import in September and December is the peak season in this country. Maybe the peak has been advanced now. My crystal ball is that from October, we will see a little bit of a softening in the market because of that. Yep. And so that's one of the main reasons why the demand increased. But also, we are more and more people in Australia, right? Like, I don't know how many people are. The population is growing every year. I think it's 150,000 a year, and we have the same capacity of vessel coming in. So because of that, the rates can only increase.
So we've seen a forward shift in demand. Is that what you'd say? Is a big driver?
Yeah, big driver. Okay. And one thing that we've seen as well is there were a big demand for EV cars into Australia and New Zealand, especially into Australia. And usually those EV cars, they move into special vessels that we call Ro-Ro vessels. But those vessels were full. So what happened is that those EV cars, they moved into containers. And that also added to the backlog and to the demand coming into Australia. So that's also one of the things that happened. So for the next few months, we should expect to have a rough August, that's for sure. Maybe a rough September, and maybe the rates starting to ease up in October.
So we talk about customers having to compete against other importers for space on ships, but Australia as a whole and New Zealand as well, we need to compete for the ships. Talk us through what that means.
That's actually a fair point because most the shipping lines, how they operate their network, they do not assign vessels per country, neither per region. They assign vessels to the most profitable trades. And what we've seen is that in May, the biggest trade lanes, which are Asia to Europe or Asia to the US, the rates went through the roof. And at some point, a container from Asia to USA was roughly $8,000 or $40, when the rates in Australia was not even $3,000 or $40. So shipping lines, they're here to make money now. So they put the vessels to the most profitable areas. And this is what happened in May. Australia lost a big chunk of vessels because it was redeployed to those big trade lanes. And there's one particular shipping line that had the service moving from China into Australia and New Zealand. And those vessels were roughly 5,500 TEUs, which is quite big vessel for the region. But they had to redeploy those vessels somewhere else. So as a result, they had much smaller ship. And as a result, they decided to stop servicing New Zealand completely And with Australia, the allocation was much smaller. So this is what happened when other trades are more profitable than what we have here. We lose the ship and we compete with the biggest trade lane worldwide.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Whether you've got a plane or a truck, you're gonna position that equipment where you're gonna get the best return. So
Yes.
it makes sense. I mean, how do we combat it? It's the rates go up. There's obviously pushback from the market, so that route isn't as profitable. We lose the vessel.
Yeah.
So it's I suppose that fine balance of pushing back on rates, but also making sure that it's profitable enough for the carriers, where they're keeping those larger vessels on
And
our
at
trade.
the end, it adjusts by itself because there's less capacity, then the rates increase, and then
So
Australia becomes.
so you get that cycle, right?
Yeah. And there's always what I've seen for a long time. There's a gap between what's happening on those big trade lane and Australia. So what we are seeing now is the rates start to soften on those big trade lane, and we might see this effect in 2 or 3 months' time in Australia. And then shipping lines will redeploy those vessels back here because it will be more profitable then. And then we will see the rates starting to soften.
We're seeing a shift. I know you've spoken about it before, but we've seen a shift with manufacturing, maybe moving away from China. Maybe we're seeing really good growth within our network in Vietnam. Direct service from Vietnam.
Yes.
What's your take on it? It's such a common question from customers. When's there going to be one? I don't think it's when, it's if there'll be one. Talk us through that.
It's there is a strong demand out of Vietnam, and indeed, we have seen a lot of Chinese manufacturers. They have moved to north of Vietnam because there's less tariff and cheaper conditions over there. If the question of whether or not we will see a direct service from Vietnam is good, because I think in terms of demand, there is a strong demand from cargo going out of Vietnam into Australia. But when you look at starting a service, you have to look at the whole rotation. And the problem we have here is that there's not enough export out of Australia going to Vietnam. And that doesn't make the service profitable enough for the shipping line. So there were one shipping line that tried it for 5 years ago, and the service lasted 3 months.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea of, unless we build, I don't know, some kind of export volumes going to Vietnam, or the shipping lines, maybe they do a rotation that calls Vietnam, but that also calls maybe South China, because it's quite close. Maybe we will see something, but until then, they will not open a purely direct service from Vietnam, because what they are telling me is that it's not profitable enough.
We're seeing, I mentioned it before, more capacity come into our trade. So we're talking 2 new services coming in?
Yes, correct, yeah. So there's 2 new services coming in. One is a consortium of 3 carriers, and another one is just 1 carrier operating the service by themselves. It started actually last week, the first sailing. So yes, the short answer is yes, it's going to help. But when is it going to be seen? Not now, because there is too much backlog at the moment on the market. There is, out of China, there's roughly 5 weeks of cargo that's still to be shipped. And the demand is still quite strong. So by the time the carriers, they evacuate all the backlog that they have out of China, especially around Shanghai and Ningbo, we will not see the first impact on this additional capacity, at least from mid-September. And I'm quite optimistic with this. So it might not be before October.
Has that been compounded by the recent typhoon?
Yes. Yeah. And that affected Shanghai and Ningbo in particular. Just to give you an idea, only 40% of the capacity in the past 2 weeks has moved out of Shanghai and Ningbo. So it means that more than 1 vessel out of 2 were canceled in this area. So now there's a big backlog. And this is why we are seeing the rates increasing for the second half of August, because the shipping lines, they feel very strong. They want to maximize the profit from the second half of August. So yes, the rates will increase as from then, but this is only from Shanghai and Ningbo that we are seeing this backlog. We see less backlog now from South China. So in a way, it's going to balance each other off,
So we're seeing, I suppose, a lot of shifts in the market. We've got weather conditions, new services coming in, typhoons. What's the new norm? Is the new norm uncertainty, and how do we stay on top of that? How do we stay ahead of the game and make sure that we make the right decisions?
I think the new norm is uncertainty. And on top of that, what has changed in the market is that if you look at 10 years ago, the market was very predictable. You had 2 peak seasons in the year, one before the Golden Week, which is roughly around October, and one before Chinese New Year at the beginning of the year. So you had peak and rates increasing at that time, but the rates were collapsing very fast after that because the shipping lines, they were not reacting fast by pulling capacity. But now there's less shipping lines in the market. We're talking about maybe 10 big shipping lines servicing Australia and New Zealand, and they work in alliances. So they can talk to each other and decide which capacity are removed. And this is something they do. They can't talk about the rate level and all of that. It's anti-competitive. But in terms of reducing the capacity, they can do that. And they are much more agile doing it. So uncertainty will be there. And now I think it's about finding what would be the next crisis. Because there's conflicts everywhere. There might be in the future some in the Chinese Sea, between Taiwan and China. This conflict can escalate. Also, some shipping lines might decide to use the northern route, across Russia and the northern pole, because it will be cheaper, faster. But at the same time, there's huge concern on environmental issues. Yep. And also, you have to cross Russia, which can also be a problem in today's world. So what I'm saying is that it's about finding what would be the next crisis. Yep. And thinking about what could be the contingency plans.
Okay. Yeah. We talk about the number of carriers, but there's consortiums. And you mentioned that they obviously interact. There's only so many vessels coming in. So whilst there might be 10 shipping lines coming to Australia, the number of vessels is, they're not all running an independent service, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a fair point. There's 4 major alliances in Australia. Yep. And that's allowing the shipping lines to share their service and minimize costs. And yes, so there's no 10 direct service coming from China into Australia, unfortunately. And we will see in the future, because those alliances, it's not something that's set in stone, that can change over the years. We've seen that the biggest shipping line in the world, they try to go solo. So at the moment, they have a partnership with another carrier, but this carrier has been acquired by another carrier. So things can change quite fast.
There's a lot of movement with the carriers.
Yes.
Right? Have the carriers, would you say, maybe since COVID, gotten smarter with controlling that supply and demand?
Oh, for sure. Yep. And there's a magic number. Huh? When you look at 5 years ago, before COVID, the number of blank sailings, and blank sailings, for the people who don't know, is canceled departure out of a certain area. The number of blank sailings almost double. So it used to be 5% of the capacity. Now we are talking 11, 12%. So yes, they are much better at managing this. And also they are much better at managing the size of the vessel. Yeah. Because before it was always the same size of vessels coming in. Now they can decide to decrease the size of the vessel for when it's not the peak season. So, the rate can stay high. So yeah, the carriers are much more agile in their approach. And yes, so uncertainty, I think, will remain. And one last thing, and shipping lines with COVID, they have learned on how to make money.
How to make money, yeah.
Because before, and I used to work in there before COVID, we were not making money. Every year, my service was losing millions.
Wow.
And I was managing the lines between Europe to Oceania. I was losing millions. After COVID, that was the other way around. Yep. And yeah, shipping lines, they have learned how to make money. And I don't think it's going to stop now.
I mean, your role will be quite tricky. You need to maintain a relationship with the carrier, but you also need to push back on them. How do you find that balance? And with the carriers becoming smarter and I suppose better at controlling the capacity into the market, how do you find that balance?
It's always a difficult balance, indeed, because there's also a personal relationship. When you build a relationship with a carrier, it's not only professional, it can become also personal. And it's finding this right balance between asking the thing that is right for the company, but also making sure that you get you stay in the good books with the shipping lines, right?
If you go too hard at them over something, it obviously can have far greater impact.
And I have a good example for you. Shipping lines at the moment, they are very interested in maximizing the profit during peak season, of course. And what they are asking us is to give a balance of long-term cargo, which is usually cheaper, and a balance of short-term cargo with the higher rates.
Yep.
And we have these discussions with the shipping lines, and it's not always easy because we are telling them that as a major forwarder in the region, we are supporting them all the time. But yes, they also want to maximize their revenue. So it's about finding the right balance between what they want and what we want. And what's important for me is to control as much volume as I can, and which we are luckily at Röhlig.
Give me some figures. Roughly how many TEU are we controlling per month?
Per month, more than 10,000.
10,000,
And
wow.
we are going to finish the year around 120,000 TUs. So that's a big number. And that's leveraged to those negotiations with the shipping lines. Because if you are a forwarder or a shipper that only do maybe 10,000 TUs and you work on your own, it's harder to have those conversations.
Yeah, excellent. So volume really helps drive those conversations as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it really helps.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Let's talk through. When you're going out to talk to a customer says, "Hey, what carrier do you recommend?" What type of questions are you asking? What are you looking for to help pick the right carrier for the right customer?
So first, I want to have an idea of what rates the shipper is actually ready to accept. If it's only cheap rates, because if it's low value commodity, so we will go with carriers that offer cheaper rates. If it's higher value commodity, we will go with a mix of carriers that offer different offering, different departure. So that's the first thing I will try to find out. But when we talk to the shipping lines and when we assess them, rate is one thing, but schedule reliability is very important. We use data from different sources, which are external to Röhlig, like Xeneta or Alphaliner, but we also build our own metrics on how to measure that. So that's one thing. And also one thing that's very important to me is to measure the performance of a shipping line at the transshipment port. Because there's a lot of cargo that connects from big liners into Singapore or into China. And we measure how long the boxes stay there, because we have some shipping lines, the box can stay 2-3 weeks, when usually it should say maximum 1 week in the transshipment port. So we measure that. And one thing that I measure that's very important is customer service. How long a shipping line will take to pick up the phone, if somebody will pick up the phone sometimes. What's their policy with claims, because claims happen all the times. And with some shipping lines, it's easier to lodge those claims than others. Who are the people I talk to? Are they people that I know they can make things happen or not? So there's a lot of variable that we use, and it's not only the rates. And that's one of the main message. Choosing a shipping line should not be only about the rates.
Yeah. As customers prepare, planning for next year, obviously we've got a named account season, that traditional season. What are some of your recommendations to have a successful named account season contract?
I think the pattern has changed as well on the named account contract. It depends on the customer, and there's pretty much 3 choices. Either you go for a named account contract, yearly rates, because you want to have visibility on what you offer, and visibility on your cost as well. So that's the third choice, and that's usually more tailored to the big companies that have forecast and strong trade lane between China into Australia. So they need to have this visibility in their costs. Then you have a second type of customer who have less predictable volume. Those type of customers, they are more suitable to the FAK market and the short-term market. My advice to those customers is to import as much as they can during the slack season, when the rate is low, and when the rates start to pick up, they can import less. But there's a third way, which is a combination of both. And that's something that many customers are going to now. So they can have some certainty in their cost on the big trade lane, let's say China to Australia. But they also have Europe, they also ship out of Southeast Asia. And there's cargo also from those regions that are not predictable and is better, maybe suitable for the FAK market. So it depends on the customer. And one thing I see with the shipping line, and which is interesting, is that I mentioned that a bit earlier. They want a mix of short-term cargo and long-term cargo. So I think the model is evolving. And that's something new, because in the past it was either FAK or NSC. Now we're going towards a contract that has a mix of FAK and NSC.
I suppose we talk to customers, they're budgeting, they're trying to work out roughly where the rates are going to sit, and then we get hit with all these surcharges: SS, PSS2, EBS, ECS. There's a whole bunch of surcharges kind of floating around at the moment, obviously with that uncertainty. When we're talking to the customers, we obviously try to prepare them as much as possible, but things pop up. How do we manage that? What's your recommendation?
First, the PSS is quite a new concept as well in this country, because that was something that was present on every trade lanes, all major trade lanes worldwide. But in Australia, it started to be implemented 3 years ago. Before that, you had a named account rate. That was the rate you were paying throughout the year. Now, the shipping lines implement those PSS. And if you don't pay these PSS, they simply don't load your cargo. The most important thing for me is that we need to provide in advance an idea of what will be those costs. And those are discussions we have with the shipping lines during the negotiations of those yearly rates. But something that's important, we need to make sure the shipping lines don't go too much overboard, and that those rates do not go over the FAK rates. For me, we need to have a healthy gap between the short-term market and the long-term market. And this is what we are seeing now. We see a healthy gap. And we have also seen shipping lines trying to implement additional charges. That was not always successful. Sometimes we don't even advertise it to the market. They approach us for additional charges, and we push back, and we manage to make sure that they don't apply it to us. But bottom line is that yes, there is additional charges during the peak, like peak season surcharge. But my role and the role of a forwarder is to make sure that there's always a healthy gap between what you will pay with those PSS and what the short-term market is paying. Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about China, Europe, the US, obviously other markets that we're quite involved with. What are you seeing in the ocean freight space on some of those other lanes?
Different dynamic. Europe is quite similar compared to what we see in Asia at the moment. And why? It's because the European cargo usually connects to the Southeast Asia service. So if the Southeast Asia trade is strong, the European market is strong. So what we do is we try to push our customers to use the direct service out of Europe instead of the transshipment service, because then there is certainty in the arrival. Even though those services are not perfect, there is still delays. It will still be better to load on a direct service than a transshipment service where your box can stay 3 to 4 weeks in Singapore.
With that direct service, we're seeing an improvement. I know there was a period where there maybe wasn't enough vessels in the rotation.
Yes,
how's that progressing?
Yes, so it definitely improved. They used to run this service with 14 vessels when they were crossing the Suez Canal. Now it's 20, and it's 3 more vessels than what we had maybe a year ago.
Right.
So it has improved. It's not perfect, but it has improved because they know the people who run that service, they know that if they are not reliable and if the transit time doesn't make sense, they will shut that service.
And people will start moving to transshipment.
Exactly. Yeah. So you need to have a strong offering on that service. Otherwise, because people pay premium rates compared to the transshipment service. So yeah, it's important that this service runs well, and it's much better now. Not perfect, but much better.
The US, we're seeing new services, more capacity. What are we seeing with the US?
First, it's a trade US to Australia that has reduced in terms of volume compared to last year. And at the same time, one of the major shipping lines, they have opened a new service that was back in February, March. So much bigger capacity now and less volume on the market. So the trade is quite soft. I think also the tariff that was applied, the extra tariff between Australia and the US, that didn't help as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very different dynamics. And for shippers importing from the US, you can book a week or 2 weeks in advance. It's not an issue compared to Asia. Very different dynamic.
Are we seeing a shift with, especially with China and the freight rates going up? More importers going with LCL. Are we seeing that at the moment? I know previously we have, where you can't get onto vessels. So I'll just send these 5 urgent pallets LCL. It's too expensive to air freight it, but I can still ship it as LCL. Yeah. Are we seeing that shift, or?
I think we are at the tipping point where we will see that shift.
Yeah.
And it's really funny you're saying that, because I had a request this morning where we had to ship LCL because we couldn't find space on a vessel out of Shanghai. Yeah. So it's happening now. I think until now it was manageable for the shippers to wait and find a good sailing that was suitable on the FCL basis. But now we will see more and more cargo shifted to LCL.
Yeah. So at the moment, there's obviously a lot of challenges trying to get space and equipment on vessels to Australia. How do we do it? What sets us apart from everyone else?
What I believe sets us apart from everyone else, first, is I have a strong team behind me. Again, great people. And what happens is that they fight hard for the customers. I can give you examples. Every day, I have maybe 20 different requests of existing or new customers who want additional space on the vessels. And I have a team of hunters. They will go to the shipping lines, try to make it happen. Sometimes you can't, but most of the times you can, because we can leverage the relationship again, the volumes that we do. We can ask a shipping lines, for example, to accept some bookings in one vessel and to as a favor, and then we can give them some bookings out of USA, because USA, I mentioned, it was quite soft at the moment. So we can do those trade-off, and having such a big volume, that really helps. So that's one thing. One thing that we, I think, do well is that we have, as Röhlig, a strong global sea freight team that support us. They are based in Germany, but they have strong relationship with the shipping lines. I go meet the shipping lines in the head office alongside this team. There's great cooperation, so it's really important to have that, and I think that sets us apart compared to a lot of competitors. And again, we don't only talk to the people and the shipping lines in Australia. I think for me, it's important we have relationship at head office level, at regional level, and at local levels. And when you have all of that, I think this is where you can make a difference and make things happen with the shipping line.
So Remi's secret recipe is a strong team behind him, a great global team, strong carrier relationships, and that, I suppose, that must-win mentality, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Excellent. We'll go to KFC after, and we'll share our secret recipe. Good. All right. Just back on LCL. So we've spoken a little bit about LCL. Obviously, you have a range of our own products where we'll fill up our own container. Maybe you can use the container to explain what LCL is and how we can support customers with LCL cargo.
Yes, because that's something we didn't mention. What is LCL? So LCL is less container load. Is basically when you don't have enough cargo to fill a FCL container, a full container load. And basically you co-load your cargo with other shippers. And at Röhlig, we have a very strong program for LCL where we are loading the majority of our LCL volume in our own boxes. So I go back a little bit on that. There is some companies that are specialized in handling the LCL. We call that co-loaders. And so that's a way that you can actually carry your LCL cargo. But also what we do, we have our own LCL program where we use our own boxes and we co-load the load of our customers, our own customers, into one box. And we have this program pretty much from everywhere in the world, mostly out of Asia, but also out of the US. Europe is one of our main products too. We also have boxes on the Trans-Tasman between Australia and New Zealand, and New Zealand to Australia. So we can basically help our LCL customers from everywhere in the world, and we load in our own containers. And we even have our own program where we import the cargo of our customers from everywhere in the world, and we consolidate it in Singapore. And then from Singapore, we use our own box to go to Australia and New Zealand.
I suppose the beauty about having our own consolidation in our own container, we've got a warehouse, and the last episode actually was all about warehousing and our warehousing footprint, but we have the ability to unpack our own containers. I know we've got very strict KPIs in terms of how fast we need to turn around that cargo. So, we may not be able to control how long it takes to get here, but once it's here and we can pick up that container, unpack it and deliver it to the customer, that's in our control. And that's where we can, I suppose, really have that difference in making sure that we get the cargo turned around, delivered to our customers nice and fast. Not just with LCL, but also with our air freight product as well, of course.
You can touch on that during the next podcast.
We'll bring Brett next time, and he'll talk us through how we consolidate and deconsolidate our air freight products. But for the most part, I think it's important we demonstrate how we consolidate for sea freight as well. All right, Remi. So give us your top 3 tips, or give us some tips on how we can get containers moving faster.
So first, I think the most important tip is to have some forecasting and what we're asking our customers to do is to book at least 4 weeks in advance. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of customers that send us orders a week in advance. And in terms of getting the space during the peak season, that makes it very complicated. So first, book in advance, maybe get some strong forecasting on a yearly basis. So that gives us an idea of how much containers are moved throughout the different months. And then that help us to put that in our global forecast and discuss that with the shipping line. And one thing that's very important, and I think that's more for the next negotiations, for the tender rates that we will negotiate next year, is to make sure that freight is not seen only as a cost to minimize, but also as integral part of the
broader supply chain.
The broader
there we
supply
go.
chain.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the word you're looking for.
Okay. I'll start from the beginning. Or?
No. Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going. All right. Okay. So, as part of the broad supply chain, and what I mean by that is that we see a lot of importers, they just focus on rate. And if they would have paid $50 more per containers at time of the negotiation, they would have been able to move so much more cargo at the tender rates, because when you go for the cheap rates, you usually stuck with one carrier. And when you pay a little bit of a premium, you can have different carrier options, more departures, and that reduces your risk. Yep. So I think it's very important that we take that into consideration, because when peak season starts, many importers, they are paying very expensive FAK rates for the cargo that don't move on the chosen shipping line. When if you have different options, you can reduce that risk, and at the end, you pay less money.
Yep. What about detention? Detention-free days, is that something that customers should be factoring in before they negotiate the freight rate, or something they should be doing afterwards?
Definitely before the negotiations.
Okay. Is that a common mistake that we see?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. But what we do as a forwarder and how we help our customers is that for most of the contracts we have with the shipping lines, we have extended free time already. So the tariff that the shipping lines give you is usually 7 days to the market, 7 days at destination. It's at least 14 days, and in some cases we can increase it to 21 days. So that's something we do, and we don't even ask our customers, because we know that's a must-have and not something that they need to request. But if it's more than 14 days, this is when we need to work a little bit harder with the shipping lines. Usually we make it happen depending on the volume and the origin, etc. But that's something, yes, that we need to know before the negotiation and not after we negotiate the rates. Yeah.
And I suppose that makes it really important for us to ask the customers the right questions. What's important to you? Is it the rate? Is it the detention-free time? Is it the transit time? Most of the time they're going to tick every box and say yes, they're all important. But I think it's asking the right questions to the customer to find out what's important to help us find the right solution for them.
Yeah. And definitely diversifying the number of shipping lines that you have is important. So again, paying this small premium goes a long way at the end, and that provides you saving at the end of the year. So that's why we are here. This is what we can do for the customers. This is what we can do for you. And what I want to say is that as procurement, me and my team, we are very involved with the customers. Last year, I think I did the calculation. I've met 150 customers across the country. Wow. Across both Australia and New Zealand.
You keep a tally, or?
Yeah. I did. Actually, I did.
You did?
Just for fun.
Okay.
So
just in your spare time?
And I think it's really important. So if you have any issues at the moment with your supply chain, if you need space on your containers, go to your on the vessels. I mean, go to your key account manager. Go to your sales rep. If you don't work with us now, just leave us a comment on LinkedIn or YouTube. But we are here to help, and I will be involved. My team will be involved. Jay's team will be involved. It's a teamwork after all. So it's not only one person that will do the job for the customers. It's the whole Röhlig network, and that's what we can do for you.
So when you talk about the bookings, it's important that the customer here gives us the forecast, but the supplier also plays a part in this, right? And that's something that we kind of maybe don't elaborate on enough. Just talk us through that, please.
Yeah. And that's actually very true. And you know it maybe even better than I do. Suppliers, sometimes the communication between the supplier and the importer, it's not as smooth. Yep. And I will say that it's very important that the suppliers talk to our origin teams and make sure that they provide the same amount of information as the importer provides in terms of forecasting, when the orders would be ready. And that's what we do at Röhlig as well. And we have a strong origin teams all around the world. And we make sure that every origin team talks to you and know your supplier. And that's something very important, because we have our own network. Pretty much everywhere in the world is a Röhlig country, is a Röhlig office, at least in all the major shipping countries. So we need to, it's very important that the suppliers provide the right information to our teams at origin, and that relationship is created and becomes strong between the two entities.
Yeah, definitely a good point. I think it's an area where we encourage the customers to give us that forecast and tell us, 4 weeks in advance. But if the supplier is not placing that booking, or if they're placing it, a week before the goods are ready, obviously then there's a gap between when we can actually place the booking to when we can get the space. So definitely something that we work with our customers on to make sure that we're giving them those tips and tricks to make sure that they're getting their space.
Fair point.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Remi. I know it's a really busy time in the ocean freight space at the moment, so I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Jay, and always happy to talk to you and the customers, so thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Well, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Drop us a like, comment, subscribe. We look forward to bringing you more content in the future. Thank you for joining.